Welcome everybody. This is Rev. Today I figured we would just kind of peruse through some of the GOAT Format World Championship top 32 deck lists. And I'll give you a breakdown of some of the decks. I kind of just want to go through some of the deck choices and all that good stuff. Uh, Before we get started, don't be a biatch and hit the subscribe button and like it, comment that bitch, and we're going to get right into it. And really, we're going to go into what the breakdown is in top 32 and some of the deck choices. Really, to give you the breakdown up front, we had 21 Chaos Turbo lists, 3 Warrior, 2 Thunder Dragon Chaos Control, 1 Chaos Recruiter, 1 Earth Aggro, 1 Goat Control, 1 Panda Burn, 1 Reasoning Gate Turbo, and 1 Warrior Thunderclap strategy, which is, if you haven't been following along, kind of what people are calling the pile. And if you're wondering, when you're watching this video why I'm not, kind of going over the decks chronologically on what got first and second and third and so forth. First of all, I don't really think it's that important. There's a lot of variance once you get to top 32, and it's pretty obvious Chaos Turbo is the best deck. And second of all, it's actually still going on. Tournament's still going on, so we're just gonna roll with it because I don't know who's gonna win. But just kind of wanted to record this while it's still hot off the press. If you want to look at these lists yourself, it's on goatformat.com. But I'm just going to go through them, how they're listed here, and I don't want to spend like too much time on each list, but just to kind of give you guys an idea of what's going on. This is a pretty standard Chaos Turbo list. It looks like we're on 21 monsters, and well, not a standard list now that I look at it. We're on 21 monsters. So it looks like we added a 21st here. Uh, I don't know. I can't pick it out for whatever reason. Um, oh, 3 faith. That looks like, yeah, usually it's just this kind of X messed me up. So usually it's 2 faith. He's on 3 and he's on 3 book. I like the card destruction. You're going to notice that's either in the main or side in a lot of lists. And I tallied up like how many players are on Phoenix Wing, Wind Blast, or Regeki Break, and there was one player that was on both, so I didn't count them. But I did a quick tally, so it might be wrong, but it's pretty close. I think 9 were on Phoenix Wing, and 11 were on Regeki Break. So it's a pretty even split. Um, I'm a Regeki Break enthusiast, so that's what I like. I just think it's better into Rogue and really almost any other deck. But Phoenix Wing Wind Blast is better in the mirror, and this is a tournament with all of the best players, and all of the best players were basically running Chaos Turbo. So, this is better in the Chaos Turbo mirror, but the deck's pretty standard. Side also looks very standard. Next is, well, Wavement, and then first was Wavement. Next is Tyned 7890. Very standard, other than the one Reaper is the 21st monster, basically. And yeah, that's basically it. This is a very, very standard list, citing the MST, which is good for the mirror, just preed. Another thing is the Hollowed Life Barrier seems to be in a handful of lists, which can come in. And I actually kind of like this. Like, I've been thinking whether or not it fits, and I think of any deck, it probably can only fit in Chaos Turbo just because you're going to want to pitch stuff. Well, you can pitch stuff in any of the matchups where it matters. So this can come in versus burn or any like alt win or OTK strategy like cat or um, uh, reasoning gate turbo or Stein or something like that. So this has a lot more flexibility versus alt win stuff um, than you'd think. And this deck can afford the discards, and it obviously wouldn't come in versus much else, just because you usually win by card advantage, but not so much the case in alt win stuff. So pretty cool list here. Side is very standard other than the Desert Sunlight. And I guess the Jinzo is a little weird. And the Call. I'm not like a huge fan of that, but um, they're in the World Championship. I'm not. Um, Next is Earth Aggro. So I'm really glad that this deck got a showing. The big changes here are the one Magician of Faith and Kaiku in the main and no rats. Um, People have been really shitting on Giant Rat a lot and just saying it's terrible and it's not worth playing. I haven't had as many bad experiences with Rat as it seems like everyone else has, but I can see where they're coming from. You're basically trimming down the monster lineup a little bit, making it more efficient. Um, and then like you have the two tutors with Rhoda and like a kind of reversal play in Magician of Faith, which I think is really good, and then just like a random floodgate in Kaiku. So this is, I think, just a fine list. I do think it is correct to have three dust shoot in the main. Um, but like cutting the rats does give you flexibility to tech in a Saku, which is probably decent, and like the mirror and stuff. So yeah, Shifty's still in it by the way, so I hope he goes far just because Chaos Turbo's kind of taken over the meta. Next is Sesto uh, playing Chaos Control. This is a pretty cool list. He is teching in the Zaborg, which I think is neat. He's opting for a few floodgates with Kaiku, and then he's going for the flip package as well, and pretty heavy on the goat package too, and electing for the decrees. Um, so yeah, I think it's pretty good. Um, Next up, I'm just trying to look like if there's anything else that's like out there. Like I guess Soul Release is pretty out there. Lightning Vortex. This side deck's very weird. Um, I'm trying to like kind of figure out like how this deck would play. I mean, I haven't played a variant like this. Like this looks pretty different. Like the more that I'm looking at it. Um, so it's kind of hard for me to pass judgment. I mean, I really don't like three Royal Decree in anything at all in my testing. Um, but this duelist had some success with it, and he's playing two Asura and the Karibo for combo stuff. This is just a strange list. I mean, I'd have to play it more to actually knock it. Um, but yeah, congrats. Um, Next is Raikoko. This formatting's annoying, but it's like basically one of the most generic Chaos Turbo lists ever, except one Regeki Break, one Phoenix Wing, kind of like the one Jar, one Solemn. Um, there's the main card destruction. Side deck is pretty standard. Asura is a little bit weird. Uh, Berserk Gorilla is a little bit weird. It's not bad, but just it's not like super standard at this point in the meta. Ray Saber. Now this is pretty cool. Like I had mentioned that Spirit Reaper is like coming back into the meta in like a big way. This is a pretty standard turbo list, except he's cutting a spy, he's cutting a deco, and um, he's going up to 21 monsters, and he's slotting in stuff like Zombira, 3 Reaper. So this really helps your matchup against Warrior or anything that's aggressive. So this is pretty cool. I mean, as inbred as this meta is, and how Chaos Turbo is kind of it at this point, it is kind of cool to see something at least a little bit different. And he's cutting the Knight Assailants too, um, which probably makes sense if you want to optimize for playing against more aggressive decks. The hard part about playing with something like this is it's not bad versus the mirror by any means because you do have like already a pre-side decked Kaiku and a mind control, but um, and you have the two main dust shoots, but it's not as optimized for the mirror from just looking at it like than it otherwise might be. I don't want this video to take too long, so I'm try to go a little faster. Purple Junk, I like this list a lot. Other than like a few things, I'm not sure like one dust shoot in the main is great. I just personally like mained card destruction. I just think it's too good, especially if you're on two Knight Assailants. I like keeping Mystical Space Typhoon in the main. I just think it makes your deck more resilient. Just because a lot of Chaos Turbo lists are becoming insanely pre-sided for Chaos Turbo and Inbred, so like just having the mystical space typhoon for like random rogue stuff or burn game one, um, I think is important. Like it just seems like too versatile of a card to the side out. Um, Three decos is interesting. Um, what did he cut for the third deco? Oh, he cut Tsukiyomi. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't like that at all, actually. I know how I feel about that. That does not seem good in my opinion. And again, I'm not trying to trash talk any of these duelists. They're in a much better position than me, but Tsukiyomi's way too versatile to cut in my opinion. Side pretty standard. Well, actually, side's not really standard at all. You got one meta, one goats. It's like a mini goat package. That's pretty cool. I like that. He's going for the like the one of meta. I think this is smart, which is he's got one sec. Yeah, this is crazy. This list is actually a lot more crazy than I thought. But like running a bunch of one ofs just gives you a lot more flexibility with siding. Pot the master. We have what what would look weird here? Do you have a mained Kaiku, which is a little off? So he's cutting a Knight Assailant, a Spy, and a Kaiku. Or so he's cutting a Knight Assailant and a Spy. And he's adding a Kaiku and just going down to 19 monsters, like the standard turbo is 20. And then one dust shoot in the main. And then everything else in the trap lineup's pretty standard other than the two solemn. Usually it's like 1 or 0. But a lot of solemns this tournament, a whole lot of solemns, which is going to come up in another list. And then he does have the Hollowed Life Barrier in the side too, which is worth noting. Reasoning Gate Turbo. This is Delinquents list. I don't think there's anything different. Um, I don't think there's anything different here. I think this is a card for card from Delinquents list. I don't know about the side. I don't remember what Delinquent sided, but I'm glad that there was a Reasoning Gate Turbo in the top cut. I think it's healthy for the meta. NB96. This is like probably the most standard list we've seen so far with Chaos Turbo. It's like the exact 20 monsters they usually play. You do have a main decked Minecon, and then a very standard trap lineup. So yeah, like this is other than like maybe the main decked Minecon, like the most basic Chaos Turbo list. And like the sided torrential is a little non-standard, but hey. And then a very standard side deck too. Like this is what you'd see in like if you like aggregated all sides, like this would be very close. Maybe like not 3 dusts, maybe like 2. Like the extra widespread's a little weird. Boxies, so this is Warrior, pretty standard, I think. Other than the 2 Jar Greed and 13 monsters, usually you'd have like another Kaiku in here, or you'd like tech in 1 or 2 flips, like a Magician of Faith, which made its way to the side. But other than that, pretty standard list. I haven't tested um, Jar of Greed, I don't think, in just regular Warrior. It was in my pile list, so maybe he's onto something here. Pretty cool list. MMF. This is like the exact 20 I was talking about for Chaos Turbo. You got the 4 Trinity pieces. I know they say it's 3 Trinity, but I really do think this is the 4th Trinity piece. Um, he is electing to side the MST. And if you're like more of a ladder player like me, I think that's a mistake. But like this is a very inbred tournament. Like it's just going to be a lot of Chaos Turbo mirrors, so that probably was a good call for a lot of these players. Um, and if you're wondering why, like Mystical Space Typhoon is like everything in the mirror is pretty much chainable. So like you don't want to be activating Mystical Space Typhoons on like any of this. Like the dust shoots are either dead or they're chainable. Ring's chainable and like Mirror Force, yeah, it's not chainable, but like at that point, like it's probably not even worth having in at all versus turbo, like the vast majority of the time. So, it probably is best to, like in a very, very high level inbred tournament like this, to have it in the side. You kind of have to pre something. Um, so yeah, Hysteric Fairy is interesting. Uh, Comes in versus Burn. Most players are electing for Amazoness Archer. I don't really know which one's correct. I guess it depends on like your light dark ratio probably, but um, Amazoness Archer's Earth, I believe. Is it? Can't remember. Mercenary, standard, except cutting an NA for a Reaper and then adding a Zambira, and then electing to pre-side a Mind Control, and have a Sakuretsu in the main. That's interesting. And one Dust Shoot. I don't know. With where the meta is, I think you have to have like a minimum of 2 Dust Shoot in the main. Most people are just doing 3, just because like Dust Shoot's really only good. Well, not only good, but it's mainly good, and it's mainly in your deck for the mirror match. And most players are on Chaos Turbo that are good right now. Another Hallowed Life Barrier. I think this is going to become more and more of a side card. Um, Frankly, it's not something that I thought of before, and I like other players have played it in the past, but after watching the stream, um, I was able to see it in action, and sometimes you like either need to use a card or see it in action to like kind of conceptualize why it's good. And I think it's just that theory that I've talked about in a lot of my older videos, which is having cards that are good in multiple matchups is really good, just because there's a lower opportunity cost to play this than something like Threatening Roar probably, because you can support the discard. Um, but Threatening Roar really only works against decks that are going to OTK you through attacks, like Reasoning Gate Turbo, or maybe like a Rescue Cat OTK or something like that. Um, Hollow Life Barrier works against those, but it also works against Burn. Like if they like try to Secret Barrel you or um, like just deserts you for like 2,000 or 2,500, you can just use it then. Um, but it also works against like other like random ass OTK shit, like um, DMOC launch, which is like the first turn kill deck. So I mean, I guess if they first turn kill you, you get first turn killed. But like if you go first and set this, like you can at least delay. Um, and Yeah, cool stuff. Tomato in the side, it's a little off. Another player doing the Call of the Hunted Jinzo. I'm just wondering like what that comes in versus. Like maybe is it Burn or something? Maybe is that good versus Warrior too? Because like they're gonna have a hard time getting over it, and then their traps are shut off. I don't know. Never tested it. Burn. So we did have a Burn player. I'm really happy that a Burn player uh, went the distance. Didn't get first place, but they got top cut. This is a relatively standard Burn list. 3 Nightmare Wheels, I guess, is a tech. Probably subbing out 1 Gravity Bind. And then 2 Giant Trunades, a tech choice, and 1 Desert Sunlight in the main is a tech choice too. Usually another flex spot is the Des Koalas, or like a rat. You can sometimes drop a rat. I've been trying to get better with Burn, and I've been mostly playing the Cat Burn variant, but I don't really know what's right or wrong, and I don't think Burn players do either. Like I don't think there's a right or wrong with like lineups. There's just a certain amount of flexibility. Ceasefire main is interesting just because you can imagine the field's going to be a lot of Chaos Turbo. The one thing that I do want to talk about is the 3 chain energy in the side, and I think this is really good. And there was somebody, I think it was at a GGP, that was kind of explaining this, so it's not an original thought, but the thing I really like about this is chain energy. First of all, it's better in certain matchups than others, which is of course, a pretty strong reason why it should be in the side deck in the first place. But the bigger reason for this is that it's either very good or very bad depending on if you go first or second. So, in my opinion, chain energy when you're going second is quite bad, and it's insanely bad versus certain matchups. Like going second and having chain energy in your deck versus something like warrior, if you draw chain energy, you probably just lose because warriors turn one, they're gonna summon something and probably set at least 3 back row unless they just drew like a very high monster count hand. So that's like the vast majority of the juice you're gonna get out of your chain energy. So it's better for you to go first and then play like a chain energy or two, and then your opponent have to play into it or set into it and then pay like all of that life points up front, and then you can follow it up with like a Trunade, which is maybe why this is in the side, and then bounce it all back and then replay your chain energies and just be like, well, I guess you got to pay again. But I think this is smart. Like I'm becoming more and more convinced that chain energy is a side deck card and not a main deck card. um, More face down removal. Some players will throw some in the main. These are for warrior and earth aggro, which I think is good. Um, Magic Drain's a little weird. Magic Cylinder. Um, I've been experimenting with this card too. The thing about Magic Cylinders, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure you want to resolve a Magic Cylinder because you're probably a lot happier with just a floodgate up and then them just not attacking, like nightmare rolling something. Because like if you have a floodgate up, this isn't going to be live most of the time, or you're going to like hit a Sangan. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. Um, it's good in theory, but in practice, there are just too many times it bricks. Marcus Law. So this is a pretty cool list. There are, I think, a few changes worth noting. So he cut a deco and he cut a Night Assailant, and he added he added an additional Souk and a Kaiku in the main, mostly for the mirror, and then Tsukiyomi for stuff like Warrior. And a main decked creature swap. That's pretty cool. A lot of players like doing some weird stuff with dust shoots, just moving them to the side, which I'm very skeptical of. Um, 3 Solemn in the main. A lot of Solemn Judgments. This card's really good. I've been saying this longer than like literally anyone. Um, Solemn Judgment's one of the best cards in the format, and it seems to be catching on. Uh, and he's got like a mini goat package in the side. The one of Scapegoat, one of the other players was doing that, and one of an additional swap. Wow. Huh. And a Jowgen and an Asura. Yeah, this is a pretty teched out list. Cool stuff. A Ludovico Rizzo. As it currently stands, he's #1 seed right now. He's probably going to win the tournament. This is an insanely standard list so far. All the monsters are copy paste 20. He's got the fourth Trinity piece, which I like. Um, it's up for debate on like I guess what your matchup call is going to be with Mystical Space Typhoon, but he's kind of balancing that out with a pre-sided Mind Control, just because this is going to be one of your best cards to side in games 2 and 3 versus Turbo. And then there was a few other things that I wanted to say about his list. I mean, another just one main dust shoot. So I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but this is a lot of players that have cut dust shoots. Um, I don't know, maybe they were just expecting a different field, because I just feel like it's at least a 2 of in this meta. I mean, Chaos Turbo is everywhere, and it's not even that bad versus like some other matchups, especially if you go first. Like even versus like Reasoning Gate, it's decent. Like Cat, it's decent against. If you go first, if you draw it like early, you can still resolve it on stuff like Warrior, albeit it's not like good to keep in games 2 and 3. The other thing that I think is interesting, and I mean I don't know what their thought process was with this, is the 3 decrees in the side. You don't really see that frequently, so I'm really not sure what Ludo's thought process was, but it's cool nonetheless just because I don't see it that frequently. I don't think, and this is like a kind of a hot take, but I don't think 3 decree belongs in any 55 ever, unless you have like a very, very like good reason to do that. Decree, in my opinion, is best as a 1 to 2 of in almost all circumstances, because I don't think you can ever side in 3 decree. Like, it's just never good to do that. Like, especially since you already have this many traps. Like, what are you gonna like? Maybe he's thinking about like going 3 decree, subbing out his traps, and then like doing like a goats meta package versus warrior. But I just really wonder, like, I guess with the addition of Swords of Revealing Light, like if that's better than Sakuretsu's, I'm really not sure. I'd have to see like how it plays because I haven't played that before, but I just like I feel like Decree's a better like if you plan on doing like a Decree smokescreen, like it's better as a 2 of because if you resolve a decree, that's great, but like if you start drawing other decrees, you just went -1 because it's a dead card. So I just don't really like 3. Um, yeah, another 3 decree list. This is a list that probably can do really damn well against Warrior, and if it draws lucky as shit, can probably do decent against Turbo because you got the 3 faiths. So you kind of got a high roll, and you're trying to abuse the creature swaps. Um, so pretty cool goat control list. Um, yeah, uh, a lot more Asuras in this tournament than I really would have ever expected. Um, some people say it's good. I have had very limited success with it, so I'm not a fan. Side looks good. I like this side a lot, actually. Yeah, this is a cool side because he's got like the mini warrior package that he can side in depending on matchups. Um, the one of Panda is interesting if he faces a mirror, I'm assuming. That's interesting. We have Chaos Turbo with just a few one of techs. Night Assailants are out for Reaper and Zombira. So I mean, after looking at these lists, I mean, one takeaway that I have is Night Assailant stock is down. People are not liking Night Assailant. I mean, they're getting cut left and right, and they are getting cut to 1 at a minimum in a lot of these lists. So I mean, that doesn't if you're like really high on card destruction like I am, I guess, maybe you could consider cutting it. Um, and Zombira stock up and Spirit Reaper stock up big time. Wow. I mean, look at this. So yeah, these 2 cards, Zombira and Reaper, really help with Warrior. So if you're having a trouble with Warrior and aggressive decks, this really makes sense. He's got even another 2 in the side. That's nuts. So he's probably siding out the decos games 2 and 3 versus Warrior. And another Jinzo call. I have to try this out, I guess. Like they're gonna force my hand. Like there's 2 and another Asura. Jeez, I guess I'm really in the minority with a lot of these opinions. Wow. And Hollowed Life Barrier. I'm telling you, this card, out of all the cards that I haven't really played and tested yet, like seems the most obvious to, I think, make a pretty big entrance in the meta. I am much, and I also think Zombira's in very good. Like I'm in agreement with players that are adding Zombiras, and I'm in agreement with players that are in certain spots adding Reapers. I think they're very slept on good cards. Well, I don't think Zombira's slept on anymore. I think everyone knows it's good, but Hollow Life Barrier, I think, as I had mentioned, is something I really think is gonna grow in popularity. Asura, like the stuff I'm like kind of trying to figure out is like I just don't see why Asura is at all in a lot of these lists, and I don't like the Jinzo call thing, but I'm gonna have to try it. Um, Pretty standard list, siding the MST, and I like this trap lineup a lot. You're playing all the most 3 powerful traps in the main. Um, you have the 2 dust shoots, which I think is a good starter number, and then 2 Rikeki breaks, which I think is the good number, and then the flex spots, in my opinion, are like the Solemns and Jars, and you can either go like 2 Solemn a jar or 2 jars of Solemn. the nice thing about one solemn is you just draw it a lot less frequently um, in the early game, so you can kind of like hold it for a while and then set it before you decide to make big pushes, and you're not forced to pay like 4,000 life points. All right, next is KC, another Reaper. Reaper stock up, I'm telling you guys. And a Kaiku in the main. Cutting a spy, I don't like that. Like I think you need 3 spy. 2 books. That's a little strange. And then pretty standard trap lineup other than missing the dust shoots. And a needle ceiling in the side. Yeah, there's some interesting tech choices here. Another thing is not a lot of people playing brain control unless I skipped over it. And then recruiter chaos. I am not going to pretend I know what is going on here, but I think it's cool, and I'm glad that this player showed some success um, and supporting that on the top end with 2 Zaborgs, 2 Sorks, and a BLS. So the thing about this deck is I don't think the recruiter engines are really all that powerful just because people know how to play around them better than they used to. And um, there's just not enough good targets for stuff like Angel. But if you can get to the late game, like this is going to be a very hard deck to beat because people aren't playing into the recruiters. That usually means that you can just sack them off for a Zaborg, which is really good in this meta. So he might be onto something here. I'm really not sure. This is definitely a very, very different list than what we've seen, like ever really. Um, so I'd have to test to really give an informed opinion on it. Another Asura. So maybe I'm a dope. Maybe Asura is the new meta. Um, 2 Wabokus. I don't know how I feel about that. Like what? I'm just not sure what role that plays. 2 smashing rounds too. Yeah, this is a very off meta list. So congrats. And next up, what do you know? It's Turbo. And this is again Reaper. People are saying, yo, fuck you, Night Assailant. I'm on that Reaper, bitch. Oh, and then he has like I was gonna say 1 Upstart Goblin, but the other Upstart Goblin's here. And he's on 19 monsters. I kind of like this list. If you're not going to go full send with card destruction, this is probably along the lines of what I'd play. This is probably exactly what I'd play. I'm trying to think. I really like the spell lineup. I am not a fan of Sakuretsu in the main, but what would I replace it with is the question. Yeah, I like this because I really do think if the Night Assailant, like if you have to commit to 2 Night Assailants and card destruction, that does bog down your deck quite a bit. And I think card destruction again is probably one of the most powerful cards in the format in Chaos Turbo, but there definitely comes with it a heightened opportunity cost for deck space. So just having that 1 Spirit Reaper in here, especially as decks are getting more aggressive to try to beat Turbo, definitely could be the way forward. I really like this list actually. I might copy it and do some play testing. I don't really like the Saku for some reason. Maybe it's good to catch people off guard. Um, Side looks good. Yeah, and I think bottomless is something that's going to see its way into the meta too, just because I had mentioned Zambira is everywhere, and I think people bringing that in like just makes bottomless much better. We got the Grump Dog with the deck that I was rooting to take it all, which is Thunderclap, I guess people are calling it, or Pile. I like this list. The few things that stood out to me are I don't know how I feel about DD Assailant in the main. Let me count up how many warriors he has. He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I just don't know how necessary that is. Yeah, I don't like it. And then I also don't know how I feel about Don's Lug. Like I think you could more realistically sub in like maybe another warrior and a reaper in place of those two, especially if you need to support two Mobius. The other thing that stands out to me is having no Sork in here. The list that I've played in Thunderclap, what I've liked the most is one BLS, one Sork, one Zaborg. Um, that just has seemed like the best ratio to me. Um, two Zaborg, you just brick on it a little bit too much. Like if you could run like 1.5 Zaborg, I feel like that'd be great. But yeah, let's take a look at the spells. Uh, yeah, I think mained Mindcon's a meta call. Mained Bottomless, I think, is also a meta call against Zambira, so I don't hate that. 3 Solemn, 3 Dust Shoot, really cool. I really like mained Zing in pile lists. I really, really like it. And I like the one mained Jar of Greed too. And I'll give you my reasoning for this, which is that I'll do Jar first. So Jar, I think if your opponent sees it game one, they're a lot less likely to just randomly go into your back rows with removal. Because in the back of their mind, they're going to have a lot of fear that it's chainable, especially if there are no open deck lists, if they see a jar. So they'll be more hesitant to remove your back row in certain scenarios. Because they're probably anchoring thinking, okay, there's probably 2 to 3 jars in this list, but if they just see one, um, then it kind of head fakes them a little bit on what types of back row they should play around. The same thing goes for Zing, especially if you see it game one, and even if it gets removed and you don't resolve it. The great thing about Zing is once your opponent sees it, they usually will start playing around it as much as they can if they're decent. Um, and they'll start setting one back row at a time. And that's usually when the dust tornadoes come in. Because if they're just setting one back row at a time and you just side out your Zing and side in your dust tornadoes, you just end phase dust them. And then you just start going in with your warriors and then like set up something and then they'll probably set a monster and you like then tribute something off for Zaborg, and you're just in a very commanding position because your opponent has to play and respect your back row removal a lot more. Same thing could be said with Mobius. Like you usually want to play around getting double Mobius, or at least have something chainable back there. I really like this list. I think it's really cool. Um, side Panda side's interesting. I don't know if it's worth it. Zambira. This is probably my top pick for replacing one of these two warriors. Like you could probably drop like Don's Lug for Reaper and probably drop DD Assailant and main deck the Zambira. I think that would be the best thing. Because then you also have enough warriors in your list. You have hand control with Reaper. You have stall with Reaper that helps you support Zaborg, and Zambira is Zaborg support too, because what you can do with Zambira is you just summon it and don't attack, and you just have a body. If you want to slow the game down for whatever reason, then you can sack it off for Zaborg. Not always right, but it can be. Yeah, cool stuff. All right, Gaia. Flip Warrior. The really thing that stood out to me with this list is, of course, the flips integrated with Warrior and the Reaper, but the 7 tools of the Bandit. I think this was really cool because he made a call that there was going to be a shit ton of Solemn Judgments, which there were, so it was a good call. And this card is just great for dealing with that. Um, 2 Mobius is I like Mobius at least as a one of in the side, and some pretty standard stuff. Wang Hu's of course, for stuff like Burn. Wang Hu's for stuff like um, stuff that plays scapegoats. You just summon this and you can shut those off. So yeah, pretty standard. 2 books. Probably just because your toughest matchup is going to be control, so you want like the Tsukiyomi and the 2 books to deal with Thousand Eyes. And everything else is pretty standard. The one Zing in the side, which is what it is. Geisty. So this is Thunder, not Thunder Dragon, Chaos Control. Uh, Chaos Control's a lot more, and so is Goat Control, a lot more open to interpretation. So there's not really like a standard list yet. Um, I think one Sork is pretty cool. Just speeds up your deck a little bit. You're playing the good flips, but not too many. And you're running a pretty darn low monster count, which might just be the way the deck needs to go. And then you're playing a pretty optimized trap lineup too. And then you're running really heavy with the creature swaps, metas, and scapegoats. So, huh. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't played a list that looks like this, so I don't really know if it's any good. What surprises me is that Chaos Control has been going like the opposite direction, which is like cutting swaps, like trimming down scapegoats and metas for other stuff. But Geist, I guess, just said fuck it. Like if I'm playing Chaos Control, I might as well just play like full Chaos Control and use it in its most powerful capacity. So I think it takes huevos to do that. Fresh IRL. What is he cutting? So he cut a spy for a Reaper. And he cut a Knight Assailant for another Reaper. So Reaper uply bigly, guys. Uply bigly. And then card destruction in the side, which if you're running one Knight Assailant probably is correct. Just because you can bring this in, like, depending on your matchups. And it's not going to be as bad when you face the mirror, which is quite often. The one decree, which I think is really cool. I have mentioned that like one decree I think is better than multiples. I said it even earlier in this video. Um, I just with this many traps, it surprises me. Um, but one's probably not going to hurt you that much just because you can time when you want to play it. The one, again, one does shoot in the main, so I'm definitely in the minority here. Really seems like players like one does shoot when I think two is at least the standard. Uh, then two goats meta. The goats meta package I think is really good with dealing for warrior. So this turbo list is definitely optimized to beat warrior. You got the Zambira goats meta. You got two main decked reapers and some Sakus too. Abio King. Again, the side goats meta. Very standard monster lineup. Other than the Kaiku, you're cutting a spy for it, which I definitely am not a fan of. Electing to keep the two Knight Assailants with the card destruction, which I think if you're running this in the main, you got to keep two. And again, one trap dust shoot in the main. This is nuts. I don't really think there's much else to say. I'm gonna have to reassess my trap dust shoot opinions. Um, Dueling high, been on a tear. Pretty standard warrior list. Electing for the two Zambira in the main. I think at least one is probably going to be near standard in the future for warrior lists. But he's cutting a Kaiku for an additional one. And then everything else is super standard. Pretty standard side. And basically a copy and paste. Yeah, this is like copy paste turbo list. And do like, yeah, I like this list. But again, the one trap dust shoot. So there's some trap dust shoot upheaval here, guys. Nuts. Uh, very standard side. Um, hmm, that's not standard. Skilled dark, but that's about it. Um, Anthony Alvarado electing to cut a deco for a Kaiku, and he's cutting a Knight Assailant for a Tsukiyomi, electing to main the card destruction, which is cool. And then I like this trap lineup a lot. Playing the big power 3 spells, Mirror, Ring, Torrential. Got the 2 breaks, 2 solemns, 2 dust shoots. Yeah, I like that. Like my ideal trap lineup is, as I had mentioned, going to be very similar to that. Maybe like trying to weave in one Jar of Greed or something. Um, he has the 2 Zombiras in the side, which I think is really cool. I don't know if he's the one that popularized it, but I think Anthony was the one that has had the at least most success with it, or like had the most early success with it. So like he's pretty much like the person that popularized it, if you want to say that. A creature swap on the side with the goats, which is interesting. I mean, maybe that's right. Like maybe in as opposed to like goats meta, you just do goats swap because you're going to be against warrior anyway. So swap's better versus warrior than like, or it's better in more situations versus warrior than other decks. So maybe that's right, just because swap is like pretty much live in that matchup anyway. Or if you like just happen to float something, like you could even give him like a dead. You could give him a lot of stuff. Like you have two Sooks to work with. You could give him like something that's totally bricked by set removal, like Knight Assailant, Sanguine, Serpents. In a pinch, you could even do like Spies, or like if you resolve a Faith, you could do it that way. So yeah, maybe there's something to these swaps. There are a lot more creature swaps in these decks than I thought. All right, and next up, Turbo, but just cutting a Knight Assailant and siding an MST and maining a Mind Control. So he's just pre-sided a little bit for Turbo. And then pretty good trap lineup too. Then he's got the Warrior Hate. He's got the Card Destruction or non-mirror matchups, and then more Warrior Hate and more Warrior Hate. Oh my god. And the 3 Dust Shoots. So yeah, he was definitely pre-sided a decent amount, not like too much, but like a little bit for the mirror match. AJT, Berserkerilla in the main. I'd have to hear his reasoning for this. That's crazy. He's the one that's definitely been on Spirit Reaper for a while. Um, so I think he's the player that's more or less popularized this, and it seems like a lot of people have kind of gotten a wake-up call and realized how good this card is. Um, and then everything else is pretty standard. He's just basically cutting an NA for Reaper and then teching in a Berserk Gorilla to help him with Warrior, I suppose. Um, and then he has like a pre-sided Mind Control. So another takeaway is pre-sided Mind Control is definitely looking popular right now if you're playing in a high-level tournament. And a pre-sided Saku. So he's definitely pre-sided for kind of both of the most popular decks. For like Warrior with the Reaper, the Berserk Gorilla, and yeah, here it is, the Saku, and then he has like 2 Dust Shoots and a Mind Con for the Mirror, and he's running Phoenix Wing Wind Blast for the Mirror too, which is better than a Regeki Break, and he's on the Hollow Life Barrier. So yeah, there's some interesting tech choices. What surprises me the most is like, yeah, some of these cards have seen success, like, um, but uh, it seems like some of these cards kind of are like a lot more popular and represented than they ever have been in the past. Like you've got the Call Jinzo stuff. A lot of these players are on teams, so I kind of have a feeling that, and the side decked Tomato. But a lot of these players are on teams, so I have a feeling there's like some sort of communication on what text they're going to use. And then last up is, wait, Marcus Law? I feel like, wait, I feel like I already saw Marcus Law somewhere in here. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe it was Marcus Hayden. But yeah, so cutting a Deco for a Kaiku, cutting a Knight Assailant for a Tsukiyomi. So interesting. With a main deck swap too. Yeah, I feel like I definitely saw this list. The main deck swap. Yeah, I definitely did. So has to be a duplicate, because I remember I was talking about Jaugen and how that was a little weird, I think. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I mean, there are a few takeaways. You know, Reaper stock up, main decked Minecon stock up, creature swap is looking good. Um, Solemn Judgments are everywhere. The one of Trap Dust Shoot seems to be like the new meta, and Asura Priest is something a lot of people are playing more than I would have expected, and Call of the Haunted plus Jinzo is making a comeback in a very real way. I don't know how long this video was. How long was it? 50 minutes. Oh my fucking god. Holy shit. Well, that took a lot. I guess that's like a little, like that's probably like a minute and a half per deck list. So thanks for watching, guys. If you want to point anything out, leave some comments. But for now, peace.